Well, happy Monday, everybody. I hope you had a great week. Thank you for joining us for today's video devotion. Our New Testament reading plan calls for us to be in Mark chapter 5. So grab your Bible, something to take some notes with. And I hope you've already read this and written in your journal. But let's just see what God says to us. And I want to share with you what God brought to my mind and heart when I was reading this devotionally. And it's about fear. And what stood out to me in this chapter is that there are two types of fear. One fear drives us to Jesus, and our faith conquers fear. It drives us to Jesus, and our faith grows, and fear loses. The second kind of fear drives us away from Jesus, and keeps us from believing. So fear either drives you to Jesus, and your faith grows, or fear drives you away from Jesus, and your faith diminishes. It's really important then to know how we handle fear, isn't it? If that's the case. Now, in this chapter, you have an example of each. Remember, Jesus is traveling, and there's a woman who has an issue of blood hemorrhaging. So she has some female medical problems, if you will, and she had been abused by doctors and wasted a lot of money without getting any help from them. And as Jesus is in this crowd, she makes her way up to Jesus. And she reaches out and she touches Jesus. And as soon as she touches Jesus, she is healed. And Jesus feels the power flowing from him. And so he stands and he stops and he turns around and asks, "Who touched me?" And the disciples said, "You crazy? This big old crowd, you're wondering who touched you." But Jesus knew. He always does. And here's the verse 33 of chapter 5. Verse 33, the woman, fearing and trembling, aware of what had happened to her, came and fell down before Jesus, and told him the whole truth. See, hers was the kind of fear that caused her to run to Jesus and fall at his feet, be completely honest with him. Not play games, not try to be more spiritual than she was, not to be, oh, woe is me, worse than she really was. She was just honest. Because that's really the only way you can come to Jesus. She was honest, but her fear caused her to come to Jesus and fall at his feet. Now, the fear that drives you away. You'll remember Jesus in this chapter performed the miracle of casting this legion of demons out of this man who lived in the cemeteries, and his life had been horrible. And Jesus healed him. And the demons, remember, went into all those swine, those pigs, and they ran over the cliff and were drowned in the sea. And the people who saw that, we're told, went into the nearby towns and villages and cities and told everybody. And they all came out to see Jesus Christ. And when they got there, they saw this man who had been possessed by a demon and was widely known as somebody possessed by a demon. They saw him sitting there in his right mind. And as they were talking with Jesus, and the witnesses to what had happened started telling them how all these pigs had run over the bank, over the cliff, and drowned. And what's really interesting is if you look in chapter 5 at verse 17, all right, chapter 5, verse 17, it says, "And this is the people who had come out from the villages and the towns and heard what Jesus had done." And once they got the full story about these pigs drowning, in verse 17, they began to implore Jesus, to beg Jesus, if you will, to leave their region. All right, well, Mark doesn't really tell everything about it. In Luke chapter 8, verse 37, where this story is also repeated, Luke adds, "For they were gripped with great fear." So here are these people that learned that a man possessed by a demon had actually been healed. These demons had run into those pigs, and those pigs had run over and drowned. And they're afraid, wow, what kind of man is this? But their fear, Luke tells us, causes them, as Mark says, to implore or ask or beg or plead with Jesus to leave. We don't want you around here. Leave. Guess what he did? He left. If your fear causes you to run to Jesus, you find healing. And you find that he talks to you. And you find a relationship. If your fear causes you to run away from Jesus, to push him away, guess what? You can push him away. And you won't know him. You won't have his presence, his peace, his joy. So here's my question. What do you do when you're afraid? You run to Jesus or run away from Jesus? I've known people who do both, but I'll tell you what, it makes a whole lot more sense to run to Jesus when I'm afraid than to run away from him. And besides, when I run away from Jesus because I'm afraid, how does that help? What do I gain? How does it benefit me? All I do is put myself in an even worse position. But when I run to Jesus, I'm not alone anymore. I have a friend. I'm not alone anymore. So whatever you're dealing with in life, run to Jesus. Don't run away from Jesus. Hey, God bless you. Look forward to being with you tomorrow.